teste. Então, já em modo mais relaxado, estamos mesmo no final da cimeira, dar as boas tardes a quem nos acompanha aqui e a quem nos acompanha online. Dizer-vos que este início esta última sessão é no fundo aquela que marca o futuro e simbolicamente é com os mais jovens. Na realidade sou o futuro, mas já sou o presente. E os mais jovens têm, eu acho que uma responsabilidade acrescida, principalmente porque são uma geração que já teve que passar uma pandemia e quando achávamos que as coisas estavam finalmente a acalmar um bocadinho, temos uma guerra. E imagino que seja com particular preocupação que todos olhamos para o facto de que já ali ao lado, na Ucrânia, um número muito grande de jovens está condicionado, tem a sua vida profundamente condicionada, tem o seu futuro condicionado e nem sequer sabem se daqui a algum tempo poderão voltar ao seu país, que está agora profundamente destruído e devassado. Não sabemos quando é que termina, não sabemos como é que vai ser o futuro e, portanto, para todos eles, para todos os ucranianos na realidade, mas muito para os jovens, é importante que sejamos solidários e que o futuro que eles sentem condicionado não seja condicionado enquanto europeus. É também um bocadinho sobre isso que vamos falar aqui nesta sessão e não me vou demorar mais. Eu quero agradecer muito a quem me acompanha nesta mesa. Muito obrigada a Miguel, muito obrigada ao Henrique, muito obrigada mais uma vez Marcos, muito obrigada a Joana, eu ia-te chamar Paula, e muito obrigada a Oxana, porque é muito bom ter-vos aqui, fortes, resistentes. Vamos dar início a todos, dar-vos sempre as boas-vindas ao Alentejo, dizer-vos que em todos os momentos são cá muito bem-vindos, é muito bom, foi muito bom esta semana com todos vocês, foi muito bom todo o trabalho e todos os resultados a que chegámos, que na realidade é o início de trabalho. E sem mais, vou passar para o Miguel e deixo para ti as apresentações. Muito obrigada, Miguel, por cá estares.
Ora bem, muito obrigado, Carmen. Boa tarde a todas e a todos. Sou Miguel Rasquinho, sou diretor regional do Instituto Português do Desporto e da Juventude aqui no Alentejo, na região do Alentejo, na maior região do país, que representa tão somente 1/3 do território de Portugal. E, portanto, é um orgulho grande, mas é também uma responsabilidade muito, muito grande. Focando-nos diretamente naquilo que é a juventude e dispensando esta questão dos agradecimentos, porque já sei que vocês estão a fazer um trabalho fantástico com os jovens, dispensando esta questão mais formal, porque eu gosto mesmo de conversar convosco e depois ouvir até eventualmente algumas perguntas, mas dizia eu, focando-nos neste papel da juventude, de facto, o Instituto Português de Desporto e da Juventude é um instituto que em Portugal também, entre aspas, gere as expectativas dos jovens. Somos nós também que damos a palavra aos jovens do país para que eles nos digam aquilo que querem para o seu futuro. Somos nós que apoiamos financeiramente e não só, os jovens também no que diz respeito ao associativismo, ao voluntariado, que é cada vez mais importante, e ajudamos também os jovens a serem empreendedores. É um instituto que, acima de tudo, dá a palavra aos jovens. E é isso que eu também tenho tentado fazer aqui no Alentejo. Tentado congregar as vontades de todos os jovens, tentado juntar as suas sensibilidades, porque aquilo que é o norte alentejano é, por vezes, completamente diferente do sul do Alentejo, E por isso aquilo que eu quero fazer é juntar todas estas gentes, e temos conseguido, toda esta gente jovem, e fazer ouvir a voz destes jovens junto dos centros de decisão. Aliás, há uns dias, no dia 30 de abril, decorreu uma sessão em Beja sobre associativismo juvenil, onde os jovens presentes tiveram a oportunidade de construir um documento com as suas preocupações, mas apresentando as suas opiniões para a resolução desses mesmos problemas. Esse documento foi adicionado a outras opiniões de outros jovens de todo o país e foi entregue, se não me engano, no dia 10, na própria União Europeia. Foi a Federação Nacional de Associações Juvenis, que foi à União Europeia, ao Conselho da Europa, entregar as propostas que os jovens têm para Portugal, mas também para toda a Europa. E é importante aquilo que a Carmen referiu aqui há pouco. Isto da Europa é uma coisa, parece muito grande, mas é muito pequeno. A Ucrânia está ali ao lado. Como nós pensámos que nunca iríamos ter uma pandemia, nunca iríamos ter uma situação tão complicada pela qual ainda estamos a passar, também nunca imaginámos que iríamos ter uma guerra em plena Europa. Nós às vezes pensamos, bom, mas a Ucrânia está lá muito longe. Esteja longe ou esteja perto, tem pessoas que estão a morrer todos os dias, tem jovens que morrem todos os dias. E, portanto, essa é uma preocupação que nós, aqui neste cantinho da Europa, aqui em Portugal, que parece que está muito longe, temos que ter. E isso tem acontecido. Eu tenho visto, na nossa região, mas em todo o país, uma solidariedade muito grande por parte dos jovens portugueses, em tentarem ajudar, apoiar os seus congéneres, alguns até amigos que vivem na Ucrânia, mas também naqueles países limítrofes, e, portanto, tenho-me sentido muito, muito, muito satisfeito com aquilo que é a sensibilidade dos jovens portugueses para com os seus amigos, porque são mesmo compatriotas europeus, se assim se pode chamar. Portugal, deixem-me dizer, tem sido, na minha opinião, um exemplo na Europa naquilo que diz respeito ao apoio dos jovens. Por exemplo, dou-vos aqui um exemplo, Portugal foi o primeiro país da Europa a ter um orçamento participativo jovem, isto é, uma fatia do orçamento de Estado foi destinada a projetos apresentados e decididos pelos jovens portugueses. Projetos relacionados com o meio ambiente, com o apoio social, com o voluntariado, com o associativismo, fosse com aquilo que fosse, mas foram os jovens portugueses que disseram ao governo de Portugal o que é que queriam fazer com aquela verba que estava destinada no Orçamento Participativo Jovem. E depois Portugal foi também um exemplo a nível mundial, porque foi o primeiro país a ter um Plano Nacional de Juventude. E o que é este Plano Nacional de Juventude, que aliás já vai na sua versão 2.0, está a ser agora reavaliada. Este Plano Nacional de Juventude foi construído pela Secretaria de Estado do Desporto e da Juventude, pelo IPDJ, mas com os jovens, com os representantes dos jovens portugueses, com os representantes das associações juvenis, das associações académicas, dos politécnicos, as associações de estudantes do secundário, todos eles deram a sua opinião o que é que queriam neste Plano Nacional de Juventude. Isto é uma coisa, assim, em 2 ou 3 frases eu digo-vos o que é. O Plano Nacional de Juventude é um documento ao qual todos os ministérios, todo o governo, todas as autarquias têm que respeitar e têm que responder se eventualmente estiverem em causa projetos relacionados com os jovens. Imaginem que o governo, num determinado ministério, quer fazer qualquer lei que tenha implicação na vida dos jovens, tem que respeitar aquele Plano Nacional de Juventude e tem que ter em atenção aquele Plano Nacional de Juventude. Portanto, é um exemplo aqui em Portugal de como os jovens têm opinião, de como os jovens têm força para fazer mudar aquilo que têm que mudar e, portanto, este Plano Nacional de Juventude enche-nos a todos a nós aqui em Portugal. E, Carmen, quando me quiseres mandar calar, manda. Não tem problema nenhum. E, portanto, nós temos aqui esta grande marca que é a voz dos jovens portugueses ser ouvida junto dos decisores políticos. Essa é a grande mensagem que eu aqui quero transmitir. Agora, isto não é um mar de rosas, isto não é tudo muito bonito conforme nós gostaríamos que fosse. É óbvio que há falhas também dos próprios governos, das administrações centrais, das administrações locais, mas também, eu tenho que dizer, também há falhas dos próprios jovens. A juventude hoje em dia é crítica, os jovens portugueses são bem formados, não só no que diz respeito à sua formação académica, mas são jovens bem formados, diferentes da geração anterior para melhor, e precisam ser críticos e precisam de estar presentes. Não podem estar só dependentes daquilo que os dirigentes, daquilo que os decisores políticos vão fazendo. Portanto, é uma coisa que eu apelo sempre aos jovens: não deixem para os outros a responsabilidade da construção do vosso futuro. Nós aqui em Portugal utilizamos sempre muito uma frase, não só os jovens, mas enfim, toda a gente utiliza muito esta frase, que é o eles. Eles não fazem isto, ou eles não ajudam, ou eles não apoiam, mas nós nunca sabemos muito bem que entidade é esta, o eles. E o eles são, eu costumo dizer, o eles são vocês, são os jovens. Vocês é que têm que dizer, vocês é que têm que pressionar, vocês é que têm que participar. E, portanto, eu vou terminar, se calhar já me estou a alongar, para vos dizer que estou extremamente satisfeito por ocupar este lugar e por ter os jovens que tenho nesta região. Perdão. Jovens que participam em ações de voluntariado, jovens que perceberam que o ambiente e a questão ambiental é de facto aquela que é mais importante hoje em dia, excetuando obviamente esta situação da guerra que se vive na Ucrânia, e jovens que são participativos. Na minha opinião, poderiam e deveriam ainda ser muito mais. Não é uma crítica, é a constatação de um facto, e era aquilo que eu gostava, era que todos tivessem opinião, todos votassem em eleições europeias, autárquicas, legislativas, todos decidissem o seu próprio futuro. É isso que estamos a fazer no IPDJ. Nós tentamos que os jovens portugueses façam nas suas associações, nas suas escolas, de forma individual. Porque todos temos que ter um papel ativo na construção do nosso próprio futuro. Muito obrigado.
Então, muito boa tarde a todos. O meu nome é Henrique Sinsim, estou em representação da Fundação Engenho de Almeida, uma instituição da cidade de Évora, da região do Alentejo, e gostaria de também, nessa qualidade, saudar todos, em particular quem está do outro lado da linha, mas também os nossos convidados aqui presentes, por um lado a doutora Carmen, o querido amigo Miguel Casquinho, o Marcos Nogueira, a Roxana Zamora, a Lídia Pereira, e também vamos ter uma mensagem do Sr. Presidente, além da querida Joana Gude da Silva, que também está aqui connosco. Passamos imediatamente a palavra à deputada Lídia Pereira. A deputada Lídia Pereira está online, correto?
Boa tarde, conseguem ouvir-me? Boa tarde, conseguem ouvir-me?
Estamos a ouvir.
Ok, não estava a receber feedback, por isso não estava segura que a ligação estivesse bem feita. Bom, antes de mais, muito boa tarde a todos, muitos parabéns pela iniciativa e parabéns aos participantes por se envolverem e quererem saber mais sobre a Europa. Eu quero também agradecer o convite, que muito me honra, e que é sempre um gosto poder partilhar ideias e pensamento com uma plateia tão jovem interessada nas questões territoriais e europeias. Eu espero que estes dias estejam a ser uma experiência marcante para todos vós, que estejam a aumentar o vosso conhecimento sobre a Europa, sobre a sua organização, as oportunidades que existem e também, claro, os enormes desafios que enfrentamos. Em particular, a democracia e o desenvolvimento precisam de cidadãos participativos e informados, e foi também isso que estiveram a fazer por estes dias em Évora. Eu creio que este projeto e esta iniciativa têm o objetivo de dotar as pessoas, os cidadãos, de informação para tomarem melhores decisões e aumentar o vosso conhecimento sobre a Europa e o processo de decisão das políticas públicas. Acredito muito na agenda das regiões, na necessidade de capacitar a população de cada região para que estas se possam envolver e atraiam mais população, que sejam capazes de usar as forças, os seus recursos endógenos e as suas condições de competitividade para ganharem qualidade de vida. O que é que faz uma região inteligente? Que stakeholders são mais importantes? Que papel deve ter a orquestração, a coordenação do ecossistema regional? E que papel assumem temas como o conhecimento, a cocriação e a exploração? quanto mais discutirmos e avançarmos nesta discussão, mais perto estaremos de criar um melhor futuro para as regiões com menos riqueza e mais envelhecidas. As próprias instituições de ensino superior têm aqui um papel muito importante enquanto farol de conhecimento e inovação. Creio que podemos sintetizar em 4 funções que as instituições de ensino superior podem assumir e que são, a meu ver, da maior importância. Eu refiro-me à inovação empresarial, que está intimamente ligada, embora não exclusivamente, à função de investigação da universidade, desenvolvimento do capital humano, mais ligado à função de ensino, desenvolvimento comunitário, ligado ao papel de serviço público das universidades, e a capacidade institucional da região. A universidade contribui com o envolvimento da sua administração e membros da sociedade civil local. Em particular, eu creio que dando aqui o exemplo de Coimbra, Coimbra infelizmente, que é a cidade de onde sou natural, Coimbra infelizmente ficou algo perdida no tempo, e isso nota-se às vezes num exemplo muito curioso ou caricato que costumo dar, que ainda que não seja, não tenha sido sujeito a verificação empírica, eu creio que nos dá uma certa ideia da realidade em que esta cidade, que outrora era a cidade do conhecimento, e hoje em dia tem outras que competem diretamente, e se não estão até mais à frente. Eu faço muitos quilómetros na estrada, e em particular na A1, e portanto, quando venho para Coimbra, seja de Lisboa ou do Porto, vejo sempre uma certa ausência ou um certo deserto na A1 entre a Leiria e a Mielhada. E eu acho que isso é exemplificativo de um certo isolamento que a cidade foi verificando ao longo dos anos, por viver, no fundo, quase de costas voltadas. As suas organizações, as suas instituições viverem de certa forma de costas voltadas. A universidade, a Câmara Municipal, os agentes da cidade. E, portanto, com esta incapacidade de comunicação e de envolvimento para objetivos comuns, a cidade foi ficando para trás, o centro da cidade esvaziado, e cada vez menos com capacidade atrativa, até do ponto de vista empresarial. Um exemplo também paradigmático da situação em que Coimbra se encontra foi recentemente a descida de divisão da académica, a primeira vez que acontece na história da centenária académica. E, portanto, eu estou a dar aqui a ilustrar, no fundo, aquilo que não deve acontecer e que me parece que, de resto, este tipo de iniciativas também serve para congregar pensamento, para promover debate, para envolver as pessoas, e aqui eu acho que é o fundamental, que é a ação política centrada nas pessoas, com os vários agentes das nossas cidades, para que possamos, de facto, chegar a bom porto, em termos de desenvolvimento e, em particular, nos desafios que temos pela frente, desde logo da digitalização, das alterações climáticas, em que Portugal é particularmente afetado e que, portanto, exige de nós uma resposta e uma capacidade aqui de resiliência também ela diferente. E, portanto, no fundo era isto eram estas ideias que eu gostava de partilhar convosco esta tarde. Preferia estar a fazê-lo pessoalmente junto dos restantes palestrantes, a quem deixo aqui um abraço amigo, e despeço-me e espero poder encontrar-vos muito em breve. Desejo-vos um bom resto de conferência e até breve. Muito obrigada.
Muito obrigado. Muito obrigado, Eurodeputada Lídia Pereira, falar aqui sobre os cursos endógenos, a importância do sistema de conhecimento da universidade. Nós também temos em Évora a segunda universidade mais antiga do país, que felizmente tem também apresentado uma dinâmica muito positiva. E também falou aqui da questão das alterações climáticas e dizer que o Alentejo tem de facto uma excelência e uma qualidade ambiental que é hoje um ativo muito importante também para o futuro e para a atração de pessoas e de jovens. Passo a palavra a José Marcos.
Boa tarde. Eu hoje nesta sessão tenho apenas um papel, que é o de fazer a apresentação da nossa convidada, a professora Oksana Zamora. Vou fazê-la em inglês para que ela possa partilhar. Okay, Oksana, I'm saying that the only reason I'm sitting here today is to introduce you as speaker and also to make a little bit of an introductory statement about Ukraine itself. It's a personal story. You may not know it, but I used to work with Ukrainian partners and with Ukraine under projects that were sponsored and funded and promoted by the European Commission to make Ukraine to be better prepared for the digital transformation. That was 10 years ago. The initiative was local, was from the Ukrainians, and they realized they realized the need, and they convinced the Commission. I was there supporting the project, or I was kind of expert serving that project. It made me to go to Ukraine, I think, 11 times, and it made me to have a number of friends there, to work with quite a few of their best universities. And I have to, and it made me to keep in touch with the country. So last time I went there, it was already in the end of all this process. I'm very proud of that process because we started it in 2011. And from the startup centers we created in several universities, young people coming from out of the university found directly room and opportunities and space to be free to work by themselves on their own projects and to develop careers, to develop ideas, to develop innovation. And so they did. And that project was a nice one because after the project ended, the startup centers were kept functioning. They attracted investment. They got bigger. And 5 years after, it was such a surprising result that the European Commissioner for Enlargement went there just to see what happened here, that we did an European project that 5 years after is much bigger. And that is the energy of the Ukrainian people. I learned a lot with my friends in Ukraine. I suffered a lot when I saw what it happened. And there is a message that I have to say, and I say it again and again in Brussels, is that if today would be the 23rd of February 2022, for me, considering a number of parameters and comparing with other adhesions, Ukraine was fully prepared to be member of the European Union. Would have that decision been done at that time, this war would be avoided. So I think that's important message to understand that as Europeans, we have to be right, we have to be on the right side of history, and indeed to be fair with Ukraine and saying that indeed you have all the right, the capabilities, the resources, and the readiness to be member of the European Union. It's something that is achieved already, so the right is there. It's not the same vision in all the institutions, so that's an ongoing discussion in Brussels. I regret it. It should be something that should be easier. But nevertheless, that's a statement. And that's a statement to introduce my dear friend and our guest, Professor Oksana Zamora, that prepared the presentation for us. I just regret that the other people that was supposed to attend that didn't got inside the room, that nevertheless it will be recorded. So everything you may say, it will be recorded and it will be kept in the legacy of this event. And that's a superb way of closing it, is indeed to have your words and to share with us your feelings about future and this and about your country and about Europe, because those were the three words that we choose for this debate: Ukraine, Europe, and future, because there is no Europe without Ukraine, and there is no future without Europe. So, Oksana, if you may, and after Joanne, if you want to ask questions, and of course, Enrique, but please, the floor is yours.
Just a second. Searching for the presentation. Well, maybe I will start without the presentation because anyway, there are a lot of, as you said, emotions and feelings. And when I talked for the first time in front of the Committee of Regions and Rec Hub about that, some people came up to me and they were asking, how did you manage not to cry and to be, to keep your emotions? And that is probably what the majority of citizens of Ukraine are doing now. We are keeping that so deep inside that I think that sometime it will broke up. You know that probably the most terrible thing which you can get in text messages from your friends are the words which are saying that it has started. And I got this message from my very close friend because just the day before we were talking about that. And actually, maybe half a year before that, we were constantly talking about that because there were a lot of evidences, but the reason why the majority of Ukrainians didn't believe in that because come on, it's 21st century. We are searching for economic development, for civic development. We are searching how to fly to Mars, to build colonies in the space and to fight COVID and HIV and so on. And then some kind of strange initiative comes up from the country which lives still in the standards of barbarians, and they start to denazify and do strange things with the country which is not the way they describe it. And currently we have a very big debate in our society asking like why it happened, because it's not an economic reason. It's not a personal desire of the president of Russia. It's a combination of a lot of factors and things which are combined now by history, by the moment, by the society. And the answer to this is actually this is when the world closes its eyes in front of some terrible thing which is happening. It started in 90s, then it was continuing, and there were cases of Crimea accession, there were cases of Donetsk, Lugansk, and so on, and the world reaction was not very strong. Ukraine was also reluctant because we didn't know what to do. Actually, we were thinking already in different dimensions. However, it's clear that the beast, which has been living now on the territory of Russia, it's not created in a moment. It's the more than 20 years of propaganda, of ideology of the country, which considers itself supreme. And when I'm talking that, I'm not talking about from the point of view of my emotions. I'm talking to you from the point of view of a researcher, which my topic was actually international economic relations. But somehow I had to turn to the topic of war and propaganda and analysis of philosophy of war. And that's what I saw in the media. Like totally everywhere you can see the main thesis that West, they call Europe West, West is rotten, it's spoiled, and Russia is the only place for democracy, and they need to come to Europe, to West, and to change it and to teach it how to be democratic. And they see it as their whole mission. And now when they make surveys to find out the opinions of average citizens of Russia, they get the, of course, there may be a little bit of fake, but still 60, 70, 80% of people who support this war. And when the journalists are asking them why, they say, because they must be denazified. Poland must be denazified because they are ruining the monuments of the Second World War, which are praying Russian heroism, which was in the Second World War. And then those people who have brains in their thinking, they're asking why they're constantly saying this phrase, this thesis, that it's a Russian victory in the Second World War, while the majority of nations which are living on the European continent, they were fighting there. And especially, like, if to see statistically the number of Ukrainians who died in the Second World War, it's a huge number. So actually what happened in the past 20 years is a reflection of systematic approach to put the nation of Russians in a specific position of those who are constantly offended by the whole world. And we would ask why would they do that? Why don't they pay attention to economic development? Why they don't want to actually to do the same with what the rest of the world does, to develop the country? The answer is because the head of the government is fully corrupt and thinks only about earning money. And that's why they don't care what's happening with the rest of the society. They can sacrifice the life and the well-being of the whole society simply because they didn't care about them. So now they don't even count the soldiers who have been killed in Ukraine. And what's interesting, they're hiding the numbers. They don't tell the mothers where their children are. And when the mothers start to ask, they don't want to pay them money, the reimbursement for their deaths. They simply say, they write the paper that says he disappeared, we don't know where he is. Or if still mother keeps asking, they say he became a deserter, he refused to fight. So this is the attitude of their own society. And I see that my presentation is on, but I don't see it here and I cannot click. So if you could click, yeah, thank you. So as this session is dedicated to the topic of youth, I wanted to ask the young people what would they say, like how would they characterize what is the war? And I guess that the answers would be something theoretical, which would they watch on a TV or somewhere in a movie. But from my experience, I can say that I still don't know the answers for the majority of those questions which you see on the screen. I know for sure that you can keep living in the war zone, but not for long, and you don't know how you will be surviving there. And I still don't know the answer to the question, what if you can't live? And you can't live because of many reasons, because you have old parents, because you have maybe relatives who cannot walk, or you are the person with fewer opportunities. And if internet goes off, what Russians do at the majority of the occupied territories? Actually, the people get lost because they are again filled in with Russian propaganda saying that Kiev has surrendered, the capital has surrendered. So actually, you have no choice; you need to surrender as well. But still, again, the patriotism helps, and people try not to believe. But no one knows how long the war can last. And this is the example of people in Azovstal, in Mariupol. The soldiers started to give their own food to the civilians who were hiding in the basement, and they didn't care how long the war will go, because this is their duty to keep alive the civilians. And now when the civilians are extracted, the military are dying without food, without water, without medicine. And in the nearest negotiations, the Russian Minister of Defense, he said, they are not accepting their rescue by Turkish government. We want them to surrender. They don't care that they are dying, that Russians violating the humanitarian laws of all the scales. They just simply want them to surrender. And the answer of the Turkish government was really clear, that there is no such a commander who would say to surrender. Yeah, then can we go to the next slide, please? So in appeal to the youth to understand how the war is not something which should be present in the current days. When we were living in a car with 5 adults and 3 pets and 1 kid, we were fully packed, so we couldn't take anyone else with us. And I saw that 2 teenagers, like I think they were around 16, 17, with little backpacks, they were walking along the road, already behind outside the city. At that moment, I kept in mind that I was reading a lot about analysis about what was happening in Serbia, in Syria during the war. And that's why I knew that once the Russians are coming close to the city, you need to run. Otherwise, it will be something like in a Bucha or Hostomel or something. So I knew that it's right to go. And all the militaries, they were saying that if you cannot get the transport, you need to walk. And that's why those 2 girls, they were walking On the other side of the city, we already had the tanks which were smashing the cars and shooting the people. So it's about awareness what war is really, what really is, and not to compare it to those things which you see in the movies, and not to compare it to the World War II, like this. And I would ask you to apply the things which are on the slide. I'm going to name them to your cities, to your lives. Each of you are doing something for your city, for your family, for the infrastructure, for the development. You build schools, you get education, you build plans where you're going to work and so on. And thank you, Marcus, for remembering the digital jump of Ukraine in the recent years. It was really amazing, which is now being noticed by a lot of Ukrainian refugees coming to European countries. They are really surprised that the e-governance, e-banking, e-commerce, they were much advanced in some of European countries. And we don't understand this because we have certain vision of developed Europe. But I think it's something that probably now keeps afloat a lot of our industries, simply because during the war, when you cannot sign the paper or you cannot give the money to someone, but you can do e-banking, you can do electronic signature and so on, you can do business like that. And this actually saves. And the question is, what is the future? The country which on the 23rd of February was strong enough with huge potential in agriculture. We had a lot of initiatives with different countries developing trade. The country is being half ruined, but still, we had an intervention today from one of the initiators of, he developed an incubator, Dmitro Shvets from Kiev, before the war, and he was developing the businesses which were oriented at export. And now he totally changed his direction. Now he is trying to tell the world that Ukrainian business is alive, and the enterprises, they're relocating to the West, and those who can do everything online, they do it online. Can I have the next slide, please? And yeah, when we talk about war, people usually say, okay, people are killed and bombs are being thrown or missiles are thrown, but it's not all. This is the list of atrocities which you can meet in a nowadays war, and cyber attacks are going along with the genocide, with the violation of any wars and laws, and shelling and bombing is going along with extraction of people by force to the filtration camps. And I think that no one can imagine that in a war you will be taken to the actually enemy country by force, either a woman or a child, and somewhere in the middle of this country, the passport is taken away, humiliation and so on, it's very clear. But then you're restricted legally to go somewhere else during 3 years, and you are kept in some remote city with any means of work. And if you want to work, you need to accept Russian citizenship. And then there are some strange newspaper articles coming from somewhere in the middle of Russia saying that, oh, but we helped this Ukrainian woman, and she says that she hates us. She is expecting when her husband will come after her and will kill us all and help us and help her. So why would she be so angry? You know, like if she is taken from her own home, which has been bombed. And very often what they do, they use local people as a human shield. And because people in the occupied territories, they are limited of food or medicine, they use this as a factor of pressure for them. So they force them to change citizenship. They force them to donate blood for their military. The most terrible thing is that they're trying to show it as if it's a legitimate thing and to do a referendum. But in 2014, when it was all happening in Crimea, I had a student, a girl, who came up to me and said that, teacher, can I close the course a little bit earlier? Because my parents got visitors at their home in Crimea. They were armed, and they said that if you don't come back, I mean, the girl, if your daughter doesn't come back, we will kill you, because she needs to be at the referendum and she needs to vote correctly. And that's why she said that probably I will not be able to come back. So teacher, goodbye. And they don't know the destiny of this girl, actually. So it's a terrible thing. Can I have the next slide, please? The number of people who are being displaced because of different reasons. They had to flee within Ukraine, or they had to flee outside. It's really huge. You see, it's an approximate number, of course, because no one can calculate it. It's 3.4 million Ukrainians, and 90% of them are women, and the majority of this share are away from schools. Why they cannot see their fathers, and it's a clear big damage, psychological damage for this generation. But later you will see the photos on the slides of the enormous efforts which our teachers at schools, at kindergartens, and universities they do. They teach from the war zone. We have professors who are teaching being a soldier in a war zone. We have psychologists who are working with these children via Telegram, via Zoom, and so on. So yeah, we are trying to survive in this war. Can I have the next slide, please? And when I was talking about the difference between the Second World War and this one, it's a pure genocide. And the explanation of this genocide is simply because Ukraine has chosen European Union. The photo which you see, it's been done recently in Kharkiv. And there are reports and videos which are going somewhere on Telegram. You can easily find them on Ukrainian channels where Russians, they are showing them these photos to their society, actually. They're filming themselves, how they're coming to some place or to some governmental institution and they see Ukrainian flag and European flag and they destroy both. And of course, they wouldn't like to have the country which is being advancing from all among the post-USSR countries, because the main thing which is holding Russia together, it's not the common values, or it's not some ethnic background, it's not joint culture or history. It's the fear that everyone around are enemies, and the weak countries like Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and so on, they are constantly threatened that if you're not with us, you will be against us. Can I have the next slide, please? This is the hole which you see in the ground. It's the bomb in my city, because they use the bombs and I think it's called cassette missiles and so on, which are prohibited by law against civilians. They're shooting regular houses, telling that we suppose that there was some Nazi headquarter or some biological weapon or something else. Like when you read what is written, you don't understand how an literate and intelligent person can believe that. But the problem is that the level of propaganda is so high that the more ridiculous news is, the more people believe it. And behind all this is going a lot of attacks to civilians, to activists, to volunteers, to those people who try to deliver humanitarian aid. They deliberately shoot volunteers. Imagine that. They deliberately shoot medical support and hospitals. The other part is looting of civilian houses. We already know that, but the terrible thing is that they're pushing us towards the famine, because they're stealing agricultural equipment, and we have very advanced agricultural equipment which can be tracked by GPS. And recently, one of these combine harvesters, it was found in Kazakhstan and in Chechnya, just for your understanding, that you can track that they are taking this like machinery, advanced agricultural machinery, to the further regions. They do the same with educational equipment. They do the same with expensive medical equipment from the occupied territories. Let me go further. And it's all accompanied with a lot of atrocities related to genocide. This is one of the news from our Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. I will read it to you precisely. In Mariupol, occupiers took turns raping a woman for several days in front of her 6-year-old son. She later died of her wounds. Her young son hair turned gray. And I should tell you that they do it to 72-year-old women. They do it to 4-year-old boys. They don't care about that. And on the right, you see the screen from Google. I just Googled what they are proud of now. It's called Young Army, Young Army. From 8 to 18, they teach the kids to shoot, to kill people. They train them to be the soldiers, starting from the age of 8. Can I have the next? And this is the statistics of the genocide which they parallelly do to the ethnical minorities from different regions. You see that those are North Ossetia, Buryatia, Tuva, Dagestan, and so on. And these soldiers from the again, from the videos which they are shooting themselves, they are not well equipped, they are not trained, and they die in enormous numbers because they're just putting them to the front line. And if they turn back, on their back stand the divisions of so-called Kadyrovцы. The leader is Kadyrov. If I'm not mistaken, he's from Dagestan. And they shoot. So if you don't want to be a part of all this massacre, you will be shot. The problem is that you would ask, okay, why would Dagestan or Buryatia would come to Ukraine? Why would they hate us? Why would they come here? One thing is that they have this very, very strong message in their heads that they are fighting with Western values, which are rotten, which is supposed to unite them. And another thing is that they are partly grew up in the society where war is okay. And starting from 90s, I should tell you that if you analyze the majority of movies which you can see, which are very appraised by Russians, there is always someone who is killing someone who is very strong and so on. So it's not like funny Terminator, but it's something that is a regular person, like for a policeman, for example, who kills everyone, and it's really cool. So these people either live in a big poverty. That's why this is a chance for them to earn, or they are okay with killing people. So next, please. This is the statistics. You know, like dry facts, you cannot fight with dry facts. If the rest can be called opinions, then these are the surveys which are published officially by Russians. 86% of Russians tolerate and support the potential assault of the territory of European Union. 75.5% approve the idea of military invasion of Poland. 75% tolerate the extent of use of nuclear weapons. Come on, it's 21st century. On the other side, you see the statistics of Ukrainian cities which don't surrender, which don't want to be like the slaves of Russia. Can we have the next slide, please? And the next several slides will be dedicated to analysis of propaganda which has been done to support all that opinions. These are just the screens which you can easily find on the internet of most popular Russian newspapers, saying that Russia is fighting with the West for the future of the world. West will not win, but will not forgive Russia. Putin said that United West tries to destroy sovereign Russia. Rogozin said that in few minutes Russia can destroy whole NATO. And this is all supported by the hashtag I'm not ashamed. This is the campaign, the informational campaign, which was launched by Russians in the as the answer to Ukrainian campaign, not just Putin. We use this hashtag, not just Putin, to show the world the facts when Russians are not ashamed of that. And they support it. They say, we are not ashamed. And these things, they repeat constantly in books, in stories, in PhD theses. And you can see the words actually from, it's a quote. The West and its fascist Christian states would completely control the world. And if not for Russia, the planet Earth would no longer exist. Just understand that. Next slide, please. And they put it into the heads of their kids. As you see, kids are standing on the knees, on the floor, with that strange symbol. They're constantly referring to the past victory, which is supported by the slogan, "We can repeat." It means in the ideology, they can repeat, they can come to Berlin. And it's not about the development in Europe, it's about be able to repeat the war, actually. Next slide, please. I want to pay your attention to two pictures here. Actually, the priest, which is saying that it's okay to kill people, is also a nice picture. For those who say that maybe it's these atrocities belong to some maniacs or some small number of people, no, it's not, because you see that Estonian media researchers, they publish the passport location data of those who were doing the Bucha massacre. It's from all over Russia, as you see. And the other sign which I would like you to pay attention to is 1941-1945, we can repeat. This is how they see the communism defeating the fascism. The act of raping is okay for them. This is the publicly allowed sign which kids can see. Next slide, please. And the kids not only see it, but they also repeat this. As you see, they think it's a good thing to actually touch weapons. Genocide is actually based at a long-term strategy. And again, in Russian newspapers, you can find the articles where they write such things like, what should we do with Ukraine? It can no longer exist. It should be totally demolished, denazified, illustrated, and so on. But in the past weeks, there is a very strong message coming from Putler. On the 9th of May, at the parade in Moscow, he said that from this moment, it's not already the war with Ukraine. It's already the war with NATO and the United States and the European Union. That's why the philosophy of the war is changing now. They are preparing mentally their society to fight with European countries. Next slide, please. You would ask, how is it possible? There are Russians who live in Europe. They see how Europe lives. There are students coming to Europe actually within Erasmus Plus K1 mobility. How is it possible? Actually, this is all, as I said, a long story. When USSR was destroyed, the idea of communism and how it was presented there at that moment, when human life doesn't mean anything, it can be sacrificed for the bigger purposes. This idea went into as a manipulation tool into the propaganda of the countries which are post-USSR now. And as you see, only one country out of all this lot is against it. It's Ukraine. And that's why Russia, as a successor of USSR, doesn't want us to live. Next, please. This is just a photo for you to see how they see their kids happy and how we see our kids happy. And for that photo, actually, namely because our kids are wearing traditional costumes, we should be demilitarized and denazified. Demilitarized, while in 2014 we didn't have even an army, and we didn't want to increase the army. We should be demilitarized because we have nuclear developments. We have refused from nuclear weapons, and actually Russia was one of the guarantors of our peace. Those who don't support their pride, as you see in this victory in Second World War, should be punished. That's why they hate now Moldova, Litva, and Poland. And what is terrible, that sacrificing human lives, even own citizens, is okay for them so much that now they are staging attacks on their own territory. In Belgorod and other regions which are close to Ukraine, saying that Ukrainians are already attacking their territories. Why they do it? Because they want to start the total mobilization of their soldiers and to force actually more people to come to war. Now, probably people simply don't want to die yet. Next slide, please. The question which I constantly asking myself after I had to flee to Europe, if Russia comes, are European countries or cities ready? And if something like this happens, what will be the reaction of each city? Because the analysis of the progress of Russians on the territory of Ukraine has shown that in the first hours of war and in the first days of war, the resistance should come from the communities, not from the army, because not at every kilometer of your border the army will be standing. There will be cities which should be, or communities which should be protected by own people, and that's what was happening in my region. Some of the cities were taken within hours, and some of the cities, like my city Sumy, were standing for 2 weeks in a blockade, in a total blockade. And I would summarize this slide with 2 points. One point was done by Austrian president, who said that Auschwitzes don't appear from nowhere, because it means that if something like this happens, we tolerated something wrong before. And currently this war is a war of 2 completely different worldviews. Our worldview is on the photos, what you see, what I was mentioning, that our children in bomb shelters, they continue to study, and our professors being at the front line, they continue to teach. The next slide, please. And to sum up, I want to say thank you to the European community for hosting our refugees and for helping us, but it's probably the time to take side, not to be neutral, because those who are not taking side, they are supporting the aggressor. And you never know where this aggressor will go further, because North Korea didn't happen out of nowhere. It's the complex of education, culture, propaganda, which make it strong in the heads of the people. And Russia is a huge country, and if they decide to go further, they can do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oksana. It was an impressive testimony that you gave us to us about all this situation and about the years before, and the uncertain about the future and how it will be. We European and we can help this situation. I don't know if we take it to the public. If anyone would ask a question, want to ask a question right now. So I will try to one of the things that you repeated several times. It was about the propaganda, and I believe it started many years ago, and I think one of the things that we have to combat the propaganda, it's the civil society and the non-profits, and so how it is in Russia and what happens in Russia about the civil society. It is completed ruined, it's completed controlled, it's completed. How can we achieve this point? All the history of this, I believe 20 years, I don't know. How can everybody, I think everybody who are look at the Russian should see what's happening. How can we just look at and not, and what is the danger in the other countries about this topic?
I can tell you that in 2013, I was already telling this story on the first day of the summit. In 2013, I was doing my PhD thesis, and that's why I launched a project with a neighboring region, Kursk region, it's Russian region, because the topic was cross-border cooperation with Russia. I was comparing how it's been developed on the western border of Ukraine with European countries and on the eastern border with Russia. And the project was about joining the youth, active youth on our territory and on their territory, and combining their forces for development of this cooperation. So for your understanding, the group which arrived to Ukraine was accompanied by a person who was a KGB agent. I didn't understand that at that moment. He was presented to me as a vice rector of something. But then when I started to communicate closer with the students, they told me that every morning he was telling them what to say. And in the evening, every evening they were analyzing what they said, which they couldn't say, they were not allowed to say. When I came the next year to Kursk region, doing the same kind of camp, but on the air basis, they were constantly trying to push me to have a contact with the Единая Россия, single Russia, or United Russia main party, the only party. And I learned a lot from the students. For example, you cannot advance in a career if you are not the part of this party. You're obliged to wear this sign saying that you're the part of this party. And for example, I was trying to find a nonprofit organization to build some project. I was asking to contact me with this person. So this person appointed me a meeting, not in the office, not in the university, but in a supermarket, in a cafe, like in movies, like in some kind of detective. At that moment, I really couldn't, combine it. I thought that, guys, you are looking too much of detectives. And when I came, he was wearing a sign of Единая Россия, of the single party. I said, excuse me, but I don't want to talk to you because I knew already about this party. And he said, stop. And then he showed me another sign here. I said, what kind of circus are you playing here? And he said, otherwise I cannot work. So probably they might have some activists, but I'm signed up now to one girl who was an activist in St. Petersburg. Now she's against the war, but she has fled to India. She had a very simple NGO. She was helping the victims of family aggression to women. And she said that it's not possible to work because everything is turned into politics. And currently, actually, you can check the official websites of Russia newspapers, which are saying that they prohibited to use the word peace, or they prohibited to say no war, no to war. The person who was standing, I don't remember the name, but somewhere in the middle of Russia, who was standing at the silent protest with a sign, either peace or no war, he was standing 6 minutes. They were, counting how much they will allow him to stand. Then he was taken to the jail. And now they've been proud of equipping these special cars, which they're using to take people to jail after Zak, with additional, stage for people with fewer opportunities. And one of the previous interesting facts is that they have taken to this car kids which were around 10 years old. So in Ukrainian society, we are just, joking that they need to equip it with children chairs as well. So to be honest, Russia is an example when probably the big part of intelligence, they saw what's happening, but they were silent. And from this blogger, which I was mentioning, who fled to India, I learned that they were thinking that it will pass. Like all these people who believe in communism and what was happening in USSR, they are old, they will die. What can we do with them? We need to respect them and so on. So we will wait. And she also made a statement that, guys, seems like we waited too long, because more generations were growing on this. And now this propaganda, it turned it so upside down that, okay, we are not talking about communism, but we are despising the core human values. Democracy, they understand democracy completely differently. They don't even, when I compare what they use as arguments in the fights with Ukrainians, they simply don't understand even the meaning of democracy to the full. In their heads, democracy is something that is allowed by someone from the administration. Imagine that. So
And we are talking about also about the internet and the power of internet. And of course, I believe that in Russia it's shut down. Also, it's not free. And the typical ways of communication, such as other, are also controlled, I believe. So how can we try to take the truth, our truth, to their country? And how do you see, and of course the young people that are growing with all this, so how can you see that the things may change in the future, or no, you don't believe?
A very complicated question. We have a big debate about that in Ukraine now, because you know, when you see that something is really, really rotten, and it's rotten, I mean, for example, let's take a tree. It's rotten from roots and to up, you would cut it. But it's a huge society, you cannot cut it easily. And this society has a lot of representatives all around the world, so you also cannot cut them easily. So what can we do? Probably for Ukraine, there is only one way, which we have been discussing recently, the way of Israel, to become a fully militarized country with a huge wall on the border. But as for the new media and for internet, that's an interesting question. In the beginning of war, when Russians saw that Ukrainians have formed so-called informational army, and that we are trying to talk to them, they on one hand, there were some sanctions which made impossible of working like Instagram, for example, but on the other way, they also shut it down. So they prohibited to use all the possible channels where we could talk to them. And what is interesting is that the media, they have a prescription to catch some facts which are most commonly used by Ukrainians and to turn them around. So there are so-called methodological guides which tell the media representatives what arguments they should repeat when they hear some argument from our side. And it's a big psychological research saying that what they do, they constantly repeat the structures which are already in the heads of these people. And, you know, it's not only the problem of Russians, but what I see, this propaganda works so strongly that I see the same messages from people from different countries of Europe. It's really scary. And what to say, some Ukrainians repeat this. So like the strongest propaganda which is being done now in Ukraine is that they are pushing Ukrainians who stayed to hate those Ukrainians who left, even though those were mothers with children with different reasons, but they're doing that. And they're saying that European sanctions are not working. They're saying that NATO that doesn't have any forces or power. And this narrative, then they're used somewhere else. And just for your understanding how it works, go under each post of European Commission on Facebook and see what is written there. It's scary because there are bots which use Polish names, Danish names, whatever names, and they use these narratives.
Okay, I think most of people left. We should be more or less around the end. But that's, if you allow me, Oksana, I will be a bit selfish now as a citizen of Portugal, citizen of European Union. And yeah, we have a problem. It's unexpected. Perhaps we got distracted or we did some mistakes. Perhaps it could have been avoided. But now the thing is here. And if we read all the signs and if we try to read it cold, and if we try to understand perhaps all those mistakes, I don't care, but the situation we have now is that at our borders, we have a foe that is preparing for a generation war. We see it. They are teaching the kids. They are preparing for a generation war. And that's inconvenient. It might be somehow unexpected. It's totally against our immediate priorities, but indeed we have a problem. So as Europeans and as European sovereignties, countries, and as European Union, the union of those several sovereignties, we need to get prepared. And that's not done. It's not done. In Brussels, we are still discussing if we should do a declaration about climate emergency in the parliament or something else. Of course, there is a climate problem. And we are concerned if perhaps either let's get serious about this. We have suddenly, we weren't expecting, but we have a much bigger problem. Now we have to take care of our own defenses on all the things it involves and encompasses, since the ways of getting protected civil protection until the ways of getting of having anti-missile defenses and everything that never in European Union we had to take care of. But indeed now the situation is different because they are preparing for a generation war, and we don't want it. And if they win the generation war, our children disappear. And the first thing to do to prepare to that generation war is to have Ukraine as part of the European Union, so that we may get prepared for it together, and we may face the reality as it is once we are united. So that's why this is a little bit of an explanation to be practical and pragmatic. I keep doing the point that we have to accelerate the accession of Ukraine to the European Union. It's not only because I have Ukrainian friends and I love the country. That's not only because of that. That's not only because I think that Ukraine is indeed actually an added value for Europe. It would be good to have you. That's not only that, is that because we have to be practical. And first, we unite. Second, we defend. And that's the reality we are facing now. And indeed, we can't be late on responding to it. So this is my very personal view. Sorry about sharing it. And I hope you don't take it badly, but that's a little bit of what I think about it.
Thank you, Marcos. I don't know what time we should end. I had one last question. In Portugal and in Europe, there are several people against the sanctions about to the people, to the Russian people. For instance, at Ebra, our municipality, we have approved a motion to suspend the agreement with the local Russian village of Suzdal, and there are some people that still defend this cooperation. In your view, and as knowing all this situation and being outside of Ukraine, of course, how do you see these cooperation agreements? Should be useful for opening and to share our values, or should be really suspended because it is a strong political sign that we cannot stand more of these erections?
Well, this is another debate, by the way, in Ukraine, because we see that there are companies which continue to cooperate with Russia. And I think that there is one big thing which has been missed in these debates, and I think in your debates as well, that if you are standing and a wild bear or a crazy dog is running at you, you are not going to talk to her nicely or feed her. You're going to protect. And if you see that this dog can be treated nicely later, then probably you will put it on a chain and then try to psychologically do something with it. The same. Unfortunately, while we were trying to fly to the Mars and to fight COVID, we didn't notice that this society went wild. they have a little bit different values and aims now, not economic development. So unfortunately, this society now understands only the position of force. And as the country is huge, you cannot do anything, forced, what they will feel directly. It's only about economy and political and diplomatic sanctions. And they will not work immediately, of course, but this is what you can see when you go to their chats on Telegram, for example, in their little cities. Some of them feel that, for example, they cannot buy some foreign equipment, but okay, they start to do patriotic. We can buy something local. Okay, it doesn't work properly, but we will do that. Someone want to fly to Sri Lanka, but they cannot. Okay, we will go somewhere to the south. But with time, they will feel it. So only if, for now, Russia will be totally under the blockade economically, politically, and diplomatically, maybe in several years, we will have the situation when either their intellectual elite or some civic society will wake up and do something. Otherwise, we will not change anything.
Can I add a point? And I think there is a subtle detail on that thing is that on top of all you are saying, because we have to show strength, because that's the only language they understand. So if we keep cooperating, they get a bit of, considering that we are tolerating, and tolerating, it's the only word we can't use about it. So we don't tolerate. There is one thing we have to do at the same time, keeping the hope that Oksana was transmitting, that one day things will change because society will grow and the good will prevail. There is one thing we have to keep doing, is that somehow we have to keep supporting the Russians that are with us against what is going on there. Because then when we have some light or things will open somehow, those are the ones that have to rebuild. And that's like we are also doing the same, but reversely. So they are breeding a generation of fighters against Western, and we are somehow breeding a generation of new Russians when the time will come for them to take the power. So that's why I think that we have to be treating very well and protecting the Russians that flee from what they have there as a perspective of future, or just fleeing from prison, which is the case of people I know. And if they are somewhere, that's also our obligation to protect them. But that's different than keeping agreements that don't make the point that we are really against it and we don't tolerate it.
Okay, so I think we should finish. Thank you very much, Carmen, Miguel, Oksana, and Marcos. And to all the people who are seeing and participating in this debate, thank you very much. And I think Ukraine will win, the democracy will win, liberty will win. Thank you very much.